Coming up on Tech News today, is Carnegie Mellon throwing shade or shedding light on the dark web? Kashmir Hill explains. And we'll talk to one of the MIT researchers behind an app that crowdsources the therapist's couch. And make sure to look for creepy hidden cameras before you take your clothes off in an Airbnb.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, December 17th, 2015. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100 plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by the Ring video doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your house. Right now, get free expedited FedEx shipping in time for the holidays when you go to ring.com/TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. I am Megan Morrone. Our co-anchor today is Fusion editor Kashmir Hill. Welcome, Kashmir.
Thank you. Good morning.
So last year, Carnegie Mellon security researchers broke the dark web, unmasking some Tor users. Now, recently, a security researcher reached out to you and told you that the university is still running Tor nodes. What's going on?
Right. So last month, I wrote an in-depth kind of account of the attack and what happened and how Carnegie Mellon was able to compromise the network. And Tor told me, they've made changes in order to keep this from happening again. And basically what happened is Carnegie Mellon took over so many nodes that it was able to see people as they move through the supposedly anonymous network and unmask them. So this researcher was concerned because he looked at the Tor network and saw that Carnegie Mellon was still running some nodes. And so it looked to him like, oh no, this university is still trying to undermine the anonymity network. But when I took a closer look, it was, people who actually support the network who are running nodes because Tor is a volunteer network and needs people that are participating so that it works. So these nodes are okay nodes, not like the other malicious ones. And so I was just making the point in this little graphic that we have here that on one side of campus, people were trying to undermine Tor, and on the other side of campus, they're doing their best to make sure it works.
So yeah, Carnegie Mellon, obviously a huge organization with many, many people involved in many sides of the dark web, even maybe the darker sides of the dark web. So how does this relate to the other story that came out last month that Carnegie Mellon was paid to exploit the dark web? And what's the connection there?
Tor has said that they have been told that the FBI paid Carnegie Mellon, particularly the Software Engineering Institute, $1 million in order to unmask users of the network. The FBI denies this claim. Carnegie Mellon refuses to say anything about this attack, which is a little strange and has led some people to speculate that they may be under a gag order. But shortly after Carnegie Mellon, waged this attack against Tor, the FBI was able to go after child pornographers, drug dealers, people selling hacking tools that had been using the dark web and had been using Tor. And so it looked like, at the very least, whether they were paid or not, the people that waged this attack on Tor did hand over the information that they found and the users that they were able to identify so that they were able to be arrested and prosecuted. So that's kind of like related to this. And what the security researcher was worried about is that Carnegie Mellon was still doing this, still collecting this activity about users of the network who are not all criminals. There are a lot of people that use Tor to protect their privacy, to whistleblow, to avoid repressive governments. So he was very concerned that those people's privacy was being undermined.
Right. So now, can you explain the connection between the Department of Homeland Security and Tor?
Yeah, so this is what's confusing. I mean, the FBI complains about Tor, Department of Justice. Even Homeland Security agents have told a library that they shouldn't run a Tor node because it's used by criminals. And yet Tor is supported by the U.S. government. Most of its funding, it is a nonprofit, and most of its funding comes from the government, from the State Department, from the Department of Homeland Security. Tor was originally developed as a naval research lab project. And it's because the government, sometimes needs to browse the web privately. And the State Department wants, activists and journalists in other countries to be able to use the web privately and not be spied on by, repressive governments. So it's very confusing for a lot of people that look at Tor because, part of the government is talking about it as being used by criminals and this horrible tool of the dark web. And then, the other side is the government is supporting it because they know that people need privacy online. And that's something that the government should support.
So you write that there are only 7,000 Tor relays, which is part of what makes it harder for people to hack into, but that over 2 million people use Tor every day. Is it surprising that it runs at all?
So the way that Tor works is like when you sign up to use Tor, whenever you put like a request in, your request gets sent to 3 different computers so that the person on the other side, the website that you're visiting, won't know where you're coming from. So these 2 million people are using 7,000 relays, and that means that there's some like combination of 3 computers out of those 7,000 relays that support them. So it is a small network. Like if Tor is kind of similar to Bitcoin in terms of being like a kind of peer-to-peer decentralized network, and Bitcoin is so much huger than Tor, even though it is a newer network than Tor. So I was talking to Matthew Green, who's an encryption expert at Johns Hopkins, and he just made the point that like Tor is tiny, and it's why Carnegie Mellon was able to compromise it last year because it just doesn't take that much effort to get a plurality of nodes. So Tor does need more people supporting it. It needs like more people running nodes if it's going to be able to withstand further attacks. So it's good that Carnegie Mellon is running a real reliable node now, and it would be good if other people were to do that.
So our big top story actually is a good reason why we need places like Tor, why we need to be able to browse privately, and the trouble that comes with that. Late last night, Brazil blocked the Facebook-owned messaging app WhatsApp for 48 hours for failing to properly respond to a criminal case. Now, 100 million people in Brazil use WhatsApp, according to the post that Mark Zuckerberg posted on Facebook. It's 93% of the country's internet users. And then early this morning, they flip-flopped, and I guess a Brazilian judge lifted the ban, overturning a lower court. So I think what was going on here, and correct me if I'm wrong, the government was forcing Brazilian telecommunications companies to block the app because the courts were trying to get information from WhatsApp about a drug trafficking case, and then WhatsApp refused, so they shut them down. Is that what's going on?
It is. I haven't actually seen too many details about the underlying court case. I do know it had to do with a drug dealer, but WhatsApp does have end-to-end encryption that was provided to it by the developers at Whisper Systems. And it's something that Facebook, doesn't otherwise have. But it's one of these things where if I send a message to somebody else on WhatsApp using end-to-end encryption, there's no way for WhatsApp to hand that message over. Either I have to hand the message over or the person I sent it to has to hand it over. WhatsApp can't intercept it because of that end-to-end encryption. So I suspect that that's what happened here. WhatsApp isn't just refusing to hand it over, they actually can't hand it over. And this is why there's this like ongoing debate in the US right now about getting backdoors so that the government can circumvent that when they do want information. So I think this is one of the first and one of the many times this is going to happen where law enforcement wants access to something they can't get, and the company can't turn it over.
So does it sound like the Brazilian government didn't understand that they couldn't turn it over, or they were just like, oh, fine, then we have to shut it all down if you can't turn it?
Well, this is what's been so alarming lately. I mean, Britain at one point floated this proposal. It was later debunked, but that they were going to ban communication apps like WhatsApp that had end-to-end encryption that you couldn't get into. I mean, the government wants always to be able to get access to information. And so this was one of those showdowns that we're seeing where the Brazilian government, or at least this lower court, was saying, well, if you can't hand it over, then you can't exist here. They're only suspended for 48 hours. That was the initial ruling, and then it only ended up being like overturned quite quickly. But this is what we're probably going to see more of government saying, hand it over or else.
Well, in response, the encrypted messenger program Telegram was downloaded, I guess, 1 million times. So maybe it's too late for WhatsApp in this case. Maybe people are going to switch over. I don't know. Does Telegram works the same way, right? They would not be able to turn over that message.
Yes, I believe it's the same. There's quite a few apps out there like that. There's WhatsApp, there's Silent Circle, Text Secure, there's Wicker. There's quite a few of these like end-to-end encrypted apps now. And I think that is kind of what's scaring governments, especially with WhatsApp, because it happens by default. People aren't even really thinking about it. It's just this really popular app that happens to also have a very secure way of communicating.
So yesterday we learned that very soon Facebook will allow you to call your Uber right from their chat app, Messenger. You can arrange for the pickup, give details to the driver, and pay right within the app. Joining us to talk about the implications of this addition is Ruth Reeder, writer at VentureBeat. Welcome, Ruth.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So what can you tell us about how this will work in Messenger?
I mean, essentially, it's going to show up. So in Messenger, at the bottom of the screen, you always have these options. You know, Facebook Messenger wants to be this sort of like multi-interactive app. So already in there, you've got GIFs and stickers and a bunch of other things that you can sort of play with, send a live location. Now, that button with the three ellipses, or the ellipses rather, that little button right there is going to have now this additional feature called transportation. And within transportation, you're going to be able to order an Uber. Now, for now, it's just Uber, but it's not an exclusive deal. Eventually, I think Lyft is going to be in there and probably some other options. But, you know, there's no real official word on when that will be or how that will roll out.
Why is Facebook doing this? What do they get out of making it easy to call rides from within their communications app?
I mean, ultimately, it's not really just about Uber, is it? I mean, earlier this year, Facebook said that it really wants to make its platform, its messenger platform, and I think probably Facebook in total, more of a place for like doing a little bit of everything, right? They want you to be able to buy stuff in their app. They want you to be able to, you know, they want to enable this M service, which is supposed to be this like personal assistant sort of thing. So, you know, it's really about getting beyond social and getting into commerce.
So you write about how Braintree is a big part of this, the payments method. Braintree is a Twit sponsor, full disclosure. Can you explain how they're involved in the payment process here?
Sure. So Braintree does Uber's payment processing in general. Like they have long been partners, and Braintree is also partnering with Facebook for some of its like buy button e-action. But so here it's doing the same thing, right? It's just facilitating the transaction in Messenger and making sure that you are able to sort of seamlessly, you know, just hit a button and get an Uber without having to like enter in all this payment information and making it sort of less than elegant. So it oversees that component of it. But what the conclusion that I drew in my article was to say that because this is a long-standing relationship between Braintree and Facebook, you know, Braintree facilitates a lot of different on-demand services and other merchants, right? It does payment process for a lot of people out there. Think like Airbnb, Hotel Tonight, right? So imagine if you could extend this relationship between Braintree and Facebook, and all of a sudden you're able to book an Airbnb or a Hotel Tonight or order liquor from some on-demand liquor company. Do you know what I'm saying? So like in this place where you are facilitating sort of your relationships with people, you're making plans for the weekend, you're setting events, you're sending people money, right? You're doing all of these things. And so incorporating these on-demand services, or maybe eventually there will be some sort of like other commerce application. But Facebook wants to provide this platform for where you can do all of the things. And not unlike a lot of apps in China, like WeChat, for example, already does this.
And does this mean Facebook gets more information about you? They know, you know, exactly where you're going now, rather than just getting a little location information from their app?
Well, I think we can all accept that Facebook already knows everything about us. But yeah, I mean, but I think that stuff was already there, like the location stuff. They've long been following you around with your mobile device, right? So I don't think that this new, I don't think that the Messenger app is adding to that in any way. If you're concerned about your information in Facebook, you should probably just not use Facebook.
And maybe not Uber too.
And
Like,
maybe
that's
not Uber,
possible.
which, yeah, exactly.
So like you said, this isn't an exclusive deal between Facebook and Uber. Facebook says you can use Lyft and through Messenger or other services. So I know some people reporting it as a big partnership, but I'm not sure that that's really what we see in this story. Is it?
No, I think it's more just like the first instance of it, right? We've been hearing for months about how Facebook is going to roll out this like monster platform that's going to provide everything. And this is really the first example of that and what it will look like and how it will evolve.
Well, Ruth Reader, thank you so much for joining us. Ruth is a writer at VentureBeat at Ruth Reader on Twitter. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, guys.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring but not sure where to find the best candidates? As a business owner, your company is only as good as the people you hire. Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates, and short staffing leaves little time to post to dozens of job sites. Thanks to ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100 plus job sites with one single click and be instantly matched to candidates from nearly 6 million resumes. ZipRecruiter has been used by over 400,000 businesses, and you can try it now for free. Dan is a happy ZipRecruiter client. He says the hardest part about running a business when you need to hire is that you have to spend extra time recruiting while you're also short-staffed. But with ZipRecruiter, I've gotten quality candidates within 24 hours of posting a job. ZipRecruiter's website makes this process so much faster by letting me manage candidates in one place. Thanks for the feedback, Dan. Today you can try ZipRecruiter for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. And earlier this year, I talked to Robert Morris. He's a PhD at the MIT Media Lab. He was telling us about several projects he was working on. One was a social network called Coco that would reduce stress and help people connect with each other to solve their problems, or maybe not solve them, but at least understand them better. The idea was that crowdsourcing therapy would be cheaper, it would avoid the stigma that still comes with therapy, and it might be even more effective. The app Coco launched yesterday, and Robert Morris is back to talk to us about it. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Congratulations on the app. Tell us a little bit about how Coco works.
Okay, so Coco is a social app. It's designed really primarily to promote resilience in the face of stress. And it has a lot of the trappings of a traditional social app. So just like a traditional app, you can post content to the network, you can reply to other people on the network, you can browse content. But the crucial distinction is that it's not just an open-ended forum where you can post whatever you want and respond however you want. Rather, the app is designed at many different levels to help reinforce evidence-based techniques to manage stress and well-being. These are techniques that have been used in gold standard psychotherapies for many, many decades. And it's really a very simple process of helping people find alternative interpretations of negative situations. So a quick example could be, I just got fired, I go on Coco, I post that I lost my job, and my negative interpretation in the heat of the moment is that I'm a terrible employee and I'll never work again. So I imagine all of us have had these kinds of self-defeating thoughts at one time or another about small things, large things. And one of the most effective ways to manage stress is to learn how to think flexibly about stressful situations and try to find alternative interpretations that might be a little bit more optimistic, more realistic. It's very hard to do this yourself when you're stressed. So the idea of this app is you sort of crowdsource this mental computation to other people who have a different perspective. And they come on and they help remind you of things about your situation you may not be able to recall in the moment. So, for example, if you did get fired, maybe they'll prompt you to think about how you might not have liked that job, how maybe others alongside you also got laid off, so it's not just a reflection of your skills. Maybe you didn't like your boss, maybe you have a chance to pursue something else, maybe you have some time off. All these things that are really just reasonable interpretations of stress, but that kind of disappear the moment we are faced with stressful events. So that's one side of it. You can post and get these wonderful responses, again, that are structured. by this crowd of people. These aren't therapists. These are just users like you coming on. The other side is, and this is where it gets really interesting, is just like another network, you can respond to other people. And what we find is that the people who compose these responses, the technical term is a reappraisal. The people who compose these reappraisals, these ways to rethink stressful situations again and again for others, actually get the most benefit from the app. So we've evaluated it in a randomized controlled trial, and we've been doing some subsequent research with institutions like Columbia, Northwestern, and UPenn. And one of the beautiful things we're finding about our network is that it appears that the people who help most often are actually the ones who gain the most benefit. So they're the ones who are flexing this mental muscle over and over again to help others. And in doing so, they're learning this, again, evidence-based technique that they can apply to themselves to help them manage stress in their daily life.
This sounds like the opposite of Instagram, where people go to Instagram to brag about like the wonderful, best things that are happening in their life. This would be the social network where you would go and say the worst things or the most stressful things or the most annoying things happening. But I'm curious, so this is completely anonymous. No one would know it was me in particular that was having this horrible thing happening to me. And with a lot of these networks around anonymity, you tend to encounter kind of people with ill intent or people who say horrible things. How are you going to ensure that this is like a very positive network where people are, trying to lift people's spirits and help them like reassess their problems in their lives, as opposed to, saying very nasty things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that I've been working on personally ever since this project started. It started as a research project about 4 years ago at MIT. And we worked really hard with the Institutional Review Board to put some safeguards in at that time. And we've now sort of blossomed it so that there's a really sophisticated moderation system that we have in place. So every response gets read, every post gets read. We have algorithms that look for words that might indicate malicious behavior. We have members of the community helping out. It's really structured to be as warm and welcoming as possible. And I genuinely believe there are ways to really powerfully safeguard your community against these kinds of behaviors if that's in your intention. So we have a lot of mechanisms to do that, and we're constantly reevaluating them as we grow and trying new things. But that's a huge priority for us because, yes, anonymity does sort of strip away some of the inhibitions that people might otherwise have. And so we work very hard to keep it safe and welcoming.
So you're a researcher. You said that you've already looked at this data and seen that it shows one thing, that people get more out of helping than being helped. What else are you planning to do with all the data that you're collecting, and anonymously, I assume, collecting from the app?
So, yeah, right. So we can collect some of the data and look at behaviors. So we can start to learn things like what types of responses match which problems best. And we can use that data to feed back into the app to enhance the user experience and maybe give respondents more prompts and coaching to deliver the most effective response they can. We can match responses to different personality types. In addition to that, we are constantly assessing the efficacy of this. We want to make sure that as we redesign it, that we continue to maintain a tradition of evaluating the app. So we're talking with several universities and trying to come up with some data sharing agreements. This would have to involve some opt-in by our users who are willing to at least do some assessments for us. So traditional psychological assessments of well-being, measures of anxiety, depression, things like that. And what we would do is we would measure those at one instance and treat that as a baseline. And then we would have those users continue on the app, and then we would do a post-assessment. And the idea is that you would see significant changes in these outcomes over time. So there are a lot of ways to do that, and we're constantly trying to find ways to capture these assessments that still preserve a good user experience. We really hate the idea of having people fill out surveys. So we're looking at different ways to collect some data that might act as proxies to these types of assessments. But yeah, a lot of data on the efficacy is something we're trying to keep in our pipeline.
I'm curious how many users the app has right now, and then just kind of like who the intended user is. Somebody with, kind of very, mild or moderate mental health problems, or like at what point does it reach their problems are too serious and they should be escalated to a different kind of mental health service?
Yeah, those are great questions. So let me answer the latter one first, and if I forget the former, remind me. But to your question about who this is for, so we cater to anyone suffering from everyday stress. If you've ever had a negative thought in your head, if you're human, basically, you could probably stand to use this app. We do have people who have mild to moderate symptoms of anxiety and depression, especially when we first started. And what we do is if anyone posts something that suggests they're in a crisis, and again, we have moderators reading all these things, we then usher them to other crisis services. So we're not a crisis app by any means. We're more of a skill-building app and an app that provides emotional support and stress reduction in the moment for kind of those day-to-day bumps in the road. But we've found it pretty helpful for individuals who do suffer from all sorts of conditions ranging from anxiety to depression. But we're really trying to cater to anyone who's experiencing stress. And we're finding that people, with all types of concerns can benefit from the app. Your other question was about how many people. So we started with a small beta community of about 3,000, and we were working with them for 10 months to refine the app and do a lot of really collaborative design work with them. So we had a forum in the app and ways for our users to chat with us, and we'd run little experiments with them. And it was a really wonderful experience to design the app collaboratively with these users. We just launched publicly yesterday morning. And so our activity's gone up about 100x over the last day or so. So I'm not exactly sure what our numbers are now, but it's a very different scale that we kind of bumped up to just recently.
So is the app free?
Yes.
And is it ad supported, or how does it work right now?
Yeah, we really don't want to do any ad support. So our approach is to really just focus on making a really wonderful product that people value and that helps people. And if we can do that, we can look into ways to generate revenue a bit later. And we do have some ideas we're exploring, but we don't want things like ads that may run contrary to the interests of our users.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Robert R. Morris is PhD. You can find him at robertmorris.org and at Robert Morris on Twitter. And you can find Coco, the app, in the App Store. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Microsoft HoloLens offers a new showcase for developers working on apps for its mixed reality headset. We still have no word about when a consumer version of HoloLens will be available, but next year Microsoft will start selling a $3,000 HoloLens for developers, and they have created a playground for developers to find out how the headset will work so they can develop apps. What are your thoughts on Microsoft's augmented reality device, Kashmir?
I mean, it looks really cool in the pictures. I haven't given it a try yet. I'm really curious to see like when VR breaks out, though. I keep reading about like how amazing it is, but when is it really going to get to be part of our everyday lives?
It's true. It feels like the hype has been around forever, and I'm hoping that next year is the year. I think HoloLens looks amazing, and I do think that the mixed reality or the augmented reality is really interesting and more interesting to me personally than the virtual reality. But
Right.
So yesterday we talked about George Hotz, the former iPhone and PlayStation 3 hacker who has created a self-driving car in his garage. Hotz told Bloomberg's Ashley Vance that Elon Musk had offered him a job and he had turned it down. He also said that Tesla and Mobileye's driver assist technology was old-fashioned. And today, Tesla offered a rebuttal on their website, which Musk tweeted as a correction to Vance's article. Have you been following this story, Kashmir?
Yeah, this story is insane. The idea that he really was able to develop this technology that quickly is kind of astounding. And then also just the report itself, an idea of like hopping in a car and driving around. Yet again, I mean, this is like the second article we've seen where a journalist got into a car on a highway in what I would consider a dangerous situation. The first one being when Wired drove around in the hacked car. I think maybe journalists need to be a little bit more careful about creating situations that are dangerous for the public at large.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think we talked about Andy Greenberg last time where you were on, but he got a lot of flack for that. When he got in the car with those people and it was like on a major road. But I mean, he explained that it wasn't as dangerous as it might have appeared. And but I don't think if Ashley Vance is getting the same sort of flack. I haven't seen any. Have you?
I haven't, but when I was reading it, I was like, man, this sounds really dangerous. I mean, it just sounds. He's talking about being worried that he was going to leave his children fatherless. I just thought it was bizarre that it was great for journalistic value. It made for a very exciting read. But the fact that he would actually just hop in this car that Hotz had been, hacking away at for, according to him, just a month, that he had only tested for the first time that day was crazy.
My favorite line in the article is Hotz throws the wireless keyboard in his lap and says, "Don't touch any buttons or we'll both die."
I never want to be in that situation.
No, and it's interesting. I think that there's two things that I find fascinating about this story. One is Hotz is sort of like a next generation Mark Zuckerberg kind of person. So we're sort of getting used to these hackers that suddenly turn into making this technology that we use every day and that just becomes part of our lives. But then when you think about a self-driving car, how important safety is, it gets a little bit scarier. Although some people might say, and we've already talked about how Facebook is kind of scary, how we use it also. The other thing that's interesting and that Elon Musk points out, although in his way of, it's interesting that he said, this is a correction. And that's what newspapers say when they're actually making the correction, which, Bloomberg has not actually officially made a correction. He's just saying that they need to, I guess. But he says, developing self-driving car technology isn't like hacking an iPhone. You really need to be 99.99999% accurate. You can't, you have people's lives in your hands.
I was also curious what exactly the correction he's asking for. It seemed like less a request for a correction and more of a allegation that Hotz's car is not really a self-driving car, that he had driven the same stretch of road over and over and over again, and that it was more a memorization than an actual reaction to what was happening around him. But the exact nature of the correction is I think kind of fuzzy in Tesla's statement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Hotz says, he's not working on full self-driving car technology. It's just the driver assist that, the little steps that we're taking so that eventually we'll all think it's completely normal to get into a car and read by ourselves and read a book while a robot drives us.
I look forward to it.
I absolutely do. And I want it to be safe. I don't think that's too much to ask. So moving on to a few promotions at Apple today, Jeff Williams will take over the COO spot at the company. That was Tim Cook's old job that has not been filled since he became CEO after Steve Jobs' death. Jeff Williams has led development of the Apple Watch, among other projects. And also Phil Schiller, Senior Vice President of Worldwide Marketing, will now be responsible for developer-related tools and the App Store. This episode is brought to you by the Ring Video Doorbell. You can speak to anyone who is at your door from anywhere using your smartphone. Ring is more than just stopping Airbnb burglars in their tracks. This time of year, you're probably getting packages sent to the house for the holidays. With Ring, you can talk to delivery people and keep an eye on your package. If someone tries to mess with it, you'll get an instant alert and an HD video of the whole thing. It's like having a neighbor keep an eye on your house 24/7. Installing Ring takes minutes, and it works with either your current wiring or your built-in rechargeable battery. This year, give the gift of peace of mind and convenience with a video doorbell Time Magazine named one of their top 10 gadgets. Go to ring.com/TNT for free expedited FedEx shipping. That's ring.com/TNT. With Ring, you are always home. So speaking of security cameras, you wrote a totally creepy piece about a woman who's suing over a hidden camera she found in an Airbnb that she'd rented with her partner. And the creepiest part is apparently this happens a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it happens a lot, but I remember when Airbnb first started, I assumed that it would happen a lot just because you have all these people staying in strangers' homes, and there are a lot of creeps out there who like to hide cameras and, watch women in tanning salons and in bathrooms. And so I think this is probably one of the first episodes where it happened. This woman came from Germany to Irvine, California for a month in December 2013. And she says, she likes to sleep naked. She likes to walk around naked. That she and her partner, talked about intimate details of their relationship and their finances. And that the third day in the house, they discovered there was a little camera that was hidden on a bookshelf between two candles. And so now she's suing both the people who own the house and Airbnb for invasion of privacy and negligence and emotional distress. But hers is not the only story I've heard. There were some people in Canada who found 3 hidden cameras in their Airbnb. There's a couple on Reddit who said that they found one in a basket. There was actually an episode this year where a woman in a San Francisco Airbnb broke into a locked office and a locked closet and took like $35,000 in valuables. And the Airbnb owner caught her because he or she had a camera in their house. So you can totally understand why somebody renting on Airbnb or renting their place through Airbnb might want a camera there for security reasons, but then you're going to run into invasion of privacy if you don't, inform people that the camera is there.
So you're allowed to have a security camera in your Airbnb as long as you reveal that it's there.
Yes, you should disclose it, and it should not be, in the bedroom or in a bathroom. But if you do have, a camera in your living room, and this happens all the time. Like every person, all of my friends who have kids now always ask me, I want to get a nanny cam. Do I need to tell the nanny that it's there? Or can I just put it there? I don't want her to know because I want to be able to see what she's doing with my child. So, this is the cameras are getting small, they're getting cheap, they're getting really easy to use, and more people want to put them in their homes.
Well, what do you tell your friends when they ask you that?
I tell them, I say, tell the nanny. You should tell the nanny.
What I would say is if you don't trust your nanny enough that you need a camera, then get another nanny. Which I guess doesn't work with Airbnb.
Can you order another nanny?
Yeah, you can get it through Facebook Messenger now. It's like right under the Uber button. It just says nanny, and that apparently.
There's a little like icon of Mary Poppins, and you just hit that, and you get a new nanny.
Right. I mean, but that's like someone that's in your home that you have to trust anyway. It's the Airbnb story is interesting because it just brings up a whole other idea of like we are just having strangers in our house, or we are going into strangers' houses. And I mean, it's not the same. And we do. Yeah, I understand wanting to have a camera, but yes, reveal it and say that it's there, and then maybe.
And last year, Airbnb added, they have like a responsible guide for hosts where they tell them to, get carbon monoxide detector and make sure your smoke detector works. And there's a fire extinguisher. And last year they added a clause that said, let guests know if you have cameras in the home. But they only added that last year, and this incident happened 2 years ago.
Well, our last story is one that's traveling around the web, that anyone can hack into a computer running Linux by hitting the backspace button 28 times. Motherboard says that 2 security researchers from the cybersecurity group at the Polytechnic University of Valencia in Spain found that in several Linux distributions, you can bypass all authentication and take control of a lockdown computer with this technique. What do you think, Kashmir? Have you tried it?
Well, I would try it if I had a Linux computer, but there aren't that many people out there with Linux computers.
Right. I mean, it's I find it interesting because usually when computers are vulnerable to malware, that's sort of a sign of success. It used to be like only Windows were because mostly people use Windows. And then when like there was Mac malware, it's like, hooray, Macs are gaining in popularity. So hooray, Linux.
Join the crowd. I'm sure they will I will hope they fix it quickly.
Well, they did. They were responsible researchers before they announced it. They issued a patch before they announced this information. And Ubuntu, Red Hat, and Debian all have released fixes also. So show us how you can watch TNT. You just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup, or you post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. Fusion editor Kashmir Hill, is there anything else that you're working on that you can talk about today?
What else am I working on? You know what I'm working on right now actually is FBI DNA databases and how hard it can be to get your DNA out of them if you're ultimately found innocent.
Oh, interesting. Well, I look forward to reading that. You can find all of Kashmir Hill's work on Fusion, and you can find her on Twitter. And next week we'll be on holiday, so we'll be showing the holiday specials that Mike Elgin and I recorded. But we will see you soon, Kashmir. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Take care.
See you in 2016.
Okay, take care. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Spotify, Deezer, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, TuneIn, RSS. You have all the options right at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. And if you ever find yourself in the San Francisco Bay Area, please come in and watch us. Be part of our studio audience. Just send tickets to tickets@twit.tv. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. Also, don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every weekday. I will be hosting that show tonight and tomorrow. And after that, we have decided to combine Tech News Today and Tech News Tonight into one show hosted by Jason Howell and myself. We are thrilled to focus on one daily show that will be live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and that will play again in the morning, and which you can subscribe to and watch whenever you like. And that is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes, who is back and healthy and better than ever, and edited by Anthony Nielsen. Happy day after your birthday, Anthony. Don't edit that out. My name is Megan Morrone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.